So I thought that, seeing as we're talking about the creative process, maybe we should try and work out what we mean by creativity, because it's a word that is understood, I think, by people in different ways. So to some people, it might mean problem solving. To others, it might mean making something new. Creativity is often associated with the arts, but of course we use creativity in our everyday lives as well, and in all sorts of jobs that aren't necessarily considered artistic. There was a fantastic video by a group in Luton, I think, recently, looking at people working around the town, mostly in shops, and how creativity is part of their work. And there was a guy working in a fabric shop, and he was talking about, the creative element in his work is when people come into the shop looking for the fabrics, and he's there to help them work out what they might like. So he's using his creative mind there. Or if you're, building a house and something goes wrong, doesn't go to plan, you've got to be creative to work out what to do, haven't you? So I just wanted to ask, what does creativity mean to each of you? And I hope this isn't too abstract a question. Shall we start with Derek? Do you want to go?
Yeah. Well, it's all those things you just said. It's about problem solving, and I often had this idea for a long time to make a similar sort of idea, a documentary which asks the question, what is art for? And art is for all sorts of things, but it's about well, my background was a design course, and so design is about solving problems, but it's also about defining a criteria with which to work against, which design is slightly different from fine art, because fine art is about being abstract and following your whims and whatever. But with design, you have to be a little bit more specific. So it illustrates how you go through a process. So you write down, you're designing a piece of furniture, you write down what is it you want to achieve. And then your design hopefully ticks off that list of criteria. And then you solve the problem. So it's about problem solving. It's about thinking. And one of the problems I have at the moment is that it's not recognized as such within education. So schools they're riding roughshod over the creatives, music and art and theatre, and it's just always treated as an add-on. But creativity is about thinking, and it's about thinking consciously as well as subconsciously, and as well as lateral thinking and blue sky thinking, and all these different ways of doing it. Serendipity, you develop different styles to do ways to think, basically, but you can do that consciously. It's not you're an artist, and so there's something magical happens, and that just pops into your head. You can engineer that to free yourself up and make that happen. And this is not understood within the education system. So there's this bias which is completely locked into academia. And I always ask the question, what's so good about academia? And then the Ofsted people, they regulate the schools so that they say, oh, you've got to have this, and this, and you've got to do an exam in this, and they don't know how to examine the creative subjects. And so they push them out. And so I've always had this idea of getting a group of people together, artists, a bit like Ofsted, where you go and you examine the school for its creativity and its creative potential. It's called Instead, instead of Ofsted. So, the humor's there, but this kind of understanding of what art is about, it works on many different levels, and it's not appreciated that it's part of a person's development. We'll probably talk about this later, but where does an idea come from? Well, I'm always being asked that, where'd you get your ideas from? This is great. Well, it comes from my head, and you can manipulate that. all you like, and make it happen in different ways. So it's an important part. You know, they say the brain is, you know, left side is for all your logical things and all that stuff, and the right side is the creative side. Well, in schools, why don't they feed the right side as well as the left side? So there we are.
Thank you, Derek.
That's enough.
A whole new education program, I think, there, and some interesting ideas there about, yeah, like you were touching on whether ideas pop into your head or it's something you kind of work on, stuff like that. Terry, what about you? Did you have any thoughts?
Well, I first have to acknowledge how I was on mute and I was laughing at the instead joke that Derek made. I just want to salute you for that. I'm a huge fan of that idea. I'd love to join. For me, creativity is energy that moves through us, stimulated by emotion and ideas or ideals. For me, when I approach anything creatively, I look at the resources that I have available. I spent a lot of time living in India, and anyone that's lived in India or visited India will tell you that you are surrounded by examples of creativity on every street corner. Because I once saw a man turn a washing machine into a candy floss machine. And in India, they call that jugaad, making something work with the things that you have available. And that's sort of the product of creativity, the sort of the evolved manifestation of creativity. But I feel like the creativity started way before this man discovered this broken washing machine. And I approach ideas with caution and look at intention. What's underneath an idea? What's the intention behind this? What is it that we're trying to communicate? So these days, I check myself a little bit more, and I look at, whereas, you know, maybe 15 years ago, I was looking at vanity metrics and looking at how I can look good and avoid looking bad, or how I could impress my peers and maybe make a lot of money. So I'm always looking at the underlying reasons. And these days, I'm just trying to have a message outlive me. You know, I recognize how finite life is and how impermanent everything is. But I see art as an opportunity, or creativity as an opportunity, to make things last longer than we will materially be here. So I love the idea of feeling like we're creators, but I feel like the ideas are coming through us, and I feel like they're coming through me. They're not mine. Almost, you know, like a vessel through which things occur. And that's quite humbling for me, because no longer am I possessive about ideas. And I find the less possessive I am about these ideas, the more ideas come. The emptier I become, the more things get to fill me up. And I'm constantly trying to empty, and these ideas just keep coming. So no longer do I have these problems of idea blocks. I just sort of let them go and loosen the grip, as it were. And I find that creativity sort of occurs and is always occurring around us and within us, if we were just to sort of get out of our own way and unplug the hole that sort of blocks it from coming in. So I'm not sure if that made any sense, but that's what it certainly feels like to me.
No, that was actually really interesting. And yes, your idea of being a vessel, quite sort of selfless understanding of creativity, because there's also this very kind of egotistic idea of the kind of artist genius, isn't there, as well? So that seems like the complete polar opposite of that, really.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we go through modes and eons and eras and phases in our lives, and there are layers of discovery that we are always learning about ourselves with every approach that we take to any task. And often you'll hear people talk about, oh, idea just came to me while I was in the shower, or what, you know, whilst I was doing something seemingly mundane. But it's And I look at that from a neuroscientific perspective and a cognitive entrainment perspective. I think what's occurring in these seemingly mundane moments that allowed us to receive this message of this idea, this eureka moment. And almost in all my research into this and the exploration of this, I've discovered that we've got out of our own way. We stopped trying so much, and we just allowed and reminded us, and sort of, I have to constantly remind myself that we are human beings, and being is very different to doing. So we are human beings, not human doings, in that order. So I tend to take that sort of approach, which means that I'm never short of an idea, which is kind of so humbling, and so I'm always so grateful. So I just feel good in life, and a lot of dopamine being released in my head. So I'm not going to complain about it.
I suppose there's a way in which, when you create something, you put it out into the world, you have to sort of let go of it, and the meaning is always more than what you can ever imagine yourself, because it can have so many other meanings for other people, won't it? Anyway, I should move over to Terri Ann. Did you have any thoughts on creativity yourself?
I think you both described it beautifully, although I'd slightly beg to differ, Robin, in terms of, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you have to give to the world. Creativity can be a very personal, private thing. It can be a complete vanity thing where you're doing it for yourself. And I've experienced some art pieces that you can tell that it's the artist is themselves first. And anyway, I'm going off on a tangent as always. I'd say creativity is about allowing yourself to be spontaneous. I think we're lacking the ability to be spontaneous, and we panic and we get stuck and we can't think around the problems in our life. And part of that is that lack of being able to be spontaneous. I'd also call it an exploration, like being willing to explore, to consider. And on a very simple level, it's play, isn't it? It's, the most wonderful creators are children. You just, take any child and they can create a whole world out of sticks and mud. I watch my own children, and it's just amazing to watch. It's quite interesting to watch my children. One's autistic and one isn't autistic. So one is the sort of typical neurotypical and will play, and the imagination's there, and the stories are so wild and you can just see it all. But then even my autistic child, her creativity is just off the scale, but in such a different way. I think there's something very, it's something we're all born with, isn't it? And then you got to conform and you got to fit in those boxes, and these are the rules and this is what you adhere to. And I guess you go to school and this is how we need to behave, and this is the curriculum that we need to follow. And that it's sad to see that creativity start to stifle. And but even it's exciting though, because I was about to go on a rant about and then social media, and you get people that are glued to their phones, but actually there's a level of creativity that comes out of that blows my mind. The things that people can make online, and then they upload it and they post it, and it's out there for the whole world. It's global. It's it's cool.
And it's instant too, isn't it? But I've got to ask you, so do you feel like creativity is about actually maybe getting rid of all the inhibitions you've picked up and getting back to the state of being a child, or is there something that as an adult you bring to it which a child doesn't have?
I guess there's that structure, isn't it? Because if you I see it, we run a youth theatre, and when we worked with really young children and we're telling them go and devise a scene or make up a scene, they could be gone for they could be going for hours and that scene will never end. Whereas that sort of more adult approach will know, okay, there needs to be a structure, there needs to be a beginning, a middle, an end, there needs to be a formula to it. Where I think I've answered, I might have just gone off again. I think you need a little bit of both, don't you? You need that childlike permission to explore and to play, but then at some point, if you're wanting to present it, and if it's not just a source of sort of therapy for yourself, if you want to present it, you're going to have to box it at some point to present that package, or you'll have a 5-day long play, which has happened. You have that, don't you? So